This podcast is brought to you by PLI, the Practising Law Institute, providing resources to legal professionals and the law librarian community. For more information, go to pli.edu/librarian.
Hi, I'm Karen Osterly. Thanks for listening. As a practicing law librarian myself, I've been working in the legal information profession for 36 years, currently with PLI's Library Relations team.
Greg Lambert and I are talking about the evolution of law libraries, the impact of artificial intelligence in legal research and training, the importance of communication and professional development, and the law librarian community's ongoing contributions to the legal industry. While reflecting on the value of institutional memory and collaboration within law firms, Greg also shares personal insights on leadership, career growth, and the need for law librarians to advocate more strongly for the analysis, innovation, collaboration, and other critically important work they do. Hope you'll join us. Welcome, Greg. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Karen Osterly. I'm Director of Legal Research at Practising Law Institute, fondly known as PLI. And I have with me Greg Lambert, who's at Jackson Walker, and he has a new title. What is your new title now?
Yeah, so I am now the Chief Innovation Officer here at Jackson Walker. So I've been here 13 years, but new to the role.
But before that, you were Chief Information Officer, I think.
I was the Chief Knowledge Services Officer. So I had the library, our research team, and conflicts, and a bunch of other stuff. So
sure, why not?
Yeah.
So who is Chief Knowledge Officer now? Or Knowledge Management Officer, sorry.
Yeah, so right now we're in transition for that. So as you know, with all good deeds, they don't go unpunished. So actually right now I'm still doing both jobs until at least the first of the year.
That's how it goes.
Yep.
That's how it goes.
Why take one job when you can have two?
Because you're getting both paychecks, right?
Absolutely.
That's how it works at PLI too.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk a little bit about your work and your background and how you came to be Chief Innovation Officer?
Yeah, so I've always fancied myself to be into innovation, probably since I was in law school at the University of Oklahoma in the last, not just century, but the last millennium. So I was going to school full-time at OU, University of Oklahoma, also working as a programmer at the main library and doing programming on a computer mainframe that held the university's catalog. And so, from there, I learned a lot. I learned even more when I went to the Oklahoma Supreme Court, and we developed OSCN, which is the Oklahoma State Court Network, one of the first and still one of the few state-run legal information services for all of the cases and legislation for the state of Oklahoma. Dockets as well, free, available to anyone with an internet connection.
Wow.
So very, very proud of that. And we set that up in the late 90s, early 2000s. And then did a lot of interesting things when I moved to Houston in 2002. First of all, helping to rebuild the collection of the University of Houston's law library, which was destroyed in Tropical Storm Allison in June of 2001.
Oh.
Which was a lot of fun, but also, it wasn't a lot of fun too to
a lot of work.
know everything that was destroyed. And then I went to law firms, and I've been in law firms for the past 21 years, at King & Spalding for 8, and then now 13 here at Jackson Walker. And although I've been the librarian and records manager at King & Spalding and librarian and conflicts and research here at Jackson Walker, it's just been a lot of, keeping up to date with the technology, with the innovation, because not all innovation is technology. Right. And just kind of keeping my finger on the pulse of what's happening and building a good community that I can reach out to, and then leveraging that community to help me in my everyday job here at the law firm.
Wow. So you are a rarity. I didn't realize that. You were academic in law schools, several law schools, and then you were with the courts and did fabulous things there. And now you're with firms, 20 some years.
And then also did a little consulting on the side as well. So
in your copious spare time.
Yeah, all that extra time.
Well, let's talk about Oklahoma. I used to live in Tulsa. We're from Colorado. We were all born in Colorado. My father's from Nebraska, but the rest of us were born in Colorado. And I have cousins in Enid, Oklahoma. So was that Oklahoma City? Is that where University of Oklahoma is?
It's in Norman, which is about 25 miles south of Oklahoma City.
Okay.
And actually, I kind of had the weird childhood where I grew up in northern Illinois until I was 13. And my parents, who were originally from Tennessee and Mississippi, decided it'd be a great experience for a teenager to move from a metropolitan area to a very rural area in Mississippi, which turned out not to be a great experience. But so I joined the Army, left and got stationed at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and Lawton, which is in southwest Oklahoma. Did some time in Korea, got out, got called back in for Desert Storm, spent time in Washington State at Fort Lewis for a little while, and then finally got out and was able to go back to school.
My goodness.
Yeah.
My goodness. And what was fondly known as the GI Bill, did they help, I hope?
Absolutely. Paid for all of my undergrad in 1 year of my law school.
Excellent. Excellent. My father was career Army. So what did we do? We went to Madison. On the Army. He had already gone to CSU, and where my mom was also in school, and that's how they met, and that's why we were born in Colorado and all that. But well, good for you. I had no idea you had served. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for that. My oldest sister was in the Navy 6 years, but that was not my path.
It's not for everybody.
Well, it would have been okay, but I'm an academic type. So Oklahoma, and then what brought you to Houston?
Yeah, so I was hired to help rebuild the University of Houston's law library. So that was my main mission for coming down, and just to have stuck around. I did about 3 years working on that project, and then went over to King & Spalding in 2004.
Okay, so Vitas Banzoukas is the librarian I know there. You know Vitas.
In New York. Yeah, he's a great guy.
He is a great guy. Yeah. He is a great guy. I was, you know my history. I was Matthew Bender and then LexisNexis 25 years. And then not too far into that, I realized that's the job I want. Those people on the other side of the desk, that's what I should be doing. Yeah. And so I got, another master's and have the library job. So after Lexis eliminated my department in 2014, then, I was at Niley, reference librarian, head of reference 7 years, and now 3.5 years at PLI.
Nice. Yeah. When I was at King & Spalding, Marianne Fry was the director, and it was funny because when I applied for the job, the HR department actually didn't send my resume to Marianne because they thought I had too much technology background and not enough library background, which was kind of crazy because I just rebuilt a library.
Right.
And but luckily she kind of went through the paperwork, and she was like, wait a minute, why is this guy not in my list? And so she moved me over. And then I knew it was a done deal because it turned out my mother-in-law and Marianne grew up in the same little town in southeastern Idaho.
Oh my
about
God.
1,400 people.
Wow.
And they knew each other. So it was like a done deal, right?
That is fabulous. That is fabulous. I take it you get along.
World.
I take it you get along with your mother-in-law. She would have.
Oh yeah.
She would have voted yes.
Love my mother-in-law. So
okay. Well, that's remarkable. You talk about small world. That's pretty small. 1,400 people.
That's a very small world
in the town. Yeah, my mom was born in Silt, Colorado. It was quite a bit smaller than that.
Yeah.
But interesting. And so King & Spalding, and then Jackson Walker had hunted you.
Yeah. So I actually had one of the recruiters that I knew told me about this job, and it was interesting because when I had applied, I'd actually gone to lunch with the then CMO and then the office manager here in the Houston office, and it was funny because the CMO was like, well, what's happening at King and Spalding? Why are you not happy there? And you're moving on here. And I was like, whoa. No, I'm
happy.
perfectly happy.
I'm happy. I was recruited.
This is a promotion, but if this doesn't work out, I'm great where I am. And I think it kind of caught him off guard. So you can be happy and
still be checking it out.
Yeah. Still keep your options open.
Well, good for you. Good for you. And then you've built, I have to say, you've made remarkable changes at Jackson Walker and certainly raised their profile globally.
There's a lot of credit to go around at what Jackson Walker has done over the past 13 years. And because when I joined, it was rough, a little over 300 attorneys. It hasn't quite doubled in size, but it's getting close to doubling in size.
Right.
And there's just a lot. It reminds me a lot of King and Spalding, which also has huge growth, right?
Yep.
And I don't know if that's credited to it being kind of a Southern-based, law firm where there's a certain culture that is promoted there of people working alongside one another, of good communication across different departments and practice areas, and a kind of a clear. Here's where we're headed. I think both King and Spalding and Jackson Walker have had that. And the former managing partner Mike Wilson hired me, but he was already on his way out. In fact, he wasn't even the managing partner when I got here. And Wade Cooper, who's been the managing partner since, has been very good at kind of setting the sails and the rudder and everything going in the right direction. And giving us a good strategy going forward. So lots of credit to go around.
Well, you guys have done a tremendous job. So can you talk to me about your podcasting life and how you got started in that and why, and how your partner from Greenberg? I mean, I met her at Greenberg and Trowbridge.
Yeah. I'm still in the same place. She's been at like 3 different places since we started. Well, it goes back a little further. In 2009, 3 of us, myself, Toby Brown, who was at Fulbright and Jaworski then, and Lisa Salazar, who was also at Fulbright, and I was at King and Spalding. We started a blog, and that was Lisa's idea over lunch. And we were drinking Arnold Palmer's, so it wasn't even like good. It was good drinks, but it just wasn't drinks. And she had thought it was really interesting because I was a library. Toby was at that time in knowledge management. And then Lisa was over in marketing, and she says, it would be really interesting to kind of look at issues from the business side of the law firm, from the administrative side. And I thought that was actually a really good idea, because there was a lot outside of law firms. There were a number of lawyers that were blogging, but there really wasn't a lot of business of law. Right. Kind of the nuts and bolts going in of what it takes to keep a large law firm moving in the right direction. Right. And so we started that, and soon thereafter the economy tanked, and then all of a sudden people were looking for better ways to run law firms, and so we were pretty well positioned for that. And we called it 3 Geeks in a Law Blog because the 3 of us started. Right. But since then, we've had a number of people that have contributed, probably most notably Marlene Gabauer, and then Ryan McLeod and others, Zena Applebaum. There's a number of people that have contributed over the years. And then in 2017? It was 7 years ago, a little over 7 years ago, so 2017, 2018. Marlene had been after me for a number of years, probably 2 or 3 years, of saying, well, the blog's fine, but it's kind of not necessarily run its course, but there's some other options, and podcasting's kind of a big thing. Right. And I for a couple of years just said no, because I knew that although Marlene's the talent, I would be the one that would be editing all of that in the background,
doing most of the work.
Yeah, and so I held off, and it wasn't until I kind of started listening to some actually non-legal podcast. There was one that I really liked called Make Me Smart. I think it's still going, but at the time it was Kai Risdahl and Molly Wood, and it was a public radio podcast about the economy. And so I liked the format. I liked how it was, two friends, a male and a female host, how they interacted with each other, how they addressed the issues. And so for the first couple of years, we just kind of stole all of the formatting and process that podcast did because it worked really well. And then over the past 7 years and now 322 or 323 episodes later, I think we've finally come into our own. Next year we're gonna be even better.
Finally come into your own. Well, you're my 25th episode, 25th interview. Somebody asked me a couple of weeks ago, how many is this now? I said 25.
Yeah,
10,
we
10
try
and
to
then
do one. We try to do one a week, and even we also have day jobs, and I think that's one of the things that really kind of makes us a little unique,
right?
Is that and because Bob Ambrogi and I started our podcast at the same time. I think we came out like a week earlier than Bob, and neither one of us knew that the other one was putting out a podcast. And we've had a running joke that each of us are the other's second favorite podcast after our own.
Very nice.
So
very nice.
We have a lot of fun with that. But, we come from people that are actually doing the work inside of the law firms. We're not consultants. We're not reporters. It's just from us and our observations. And, sometimes we have to be careful. There's lots of things that we would love to talk about.
Right.
But, obviously we can't. But there's still a lot of things that we bring, I think, a really good insider view on how technology and innovation are working within the firms.
Right. And even more, you have conversations, you share conversations with people that we would never get to, that we would never hear from or have that inside track when you have your discussion with them.
And in fact, so when people ask me, one, they usually ask me, is like, well, how do you have the time for this? And then they also ask, well, what does your law firm think about it? And I would say the way that I look at this is my professional development. And it gives me the opportunity to reach out and talk with people that I would otherwise have really no legitimate reason to be reaching out and talking to.
Right.
Because if I come as the chief innovation officer to someone, the chances are that they're looking at, oh, good, this gives me a chance to sell to you. But because I'm coming from a podcasting, it's much more that conversation. And we bring our own perspectives in, and it makes, I think, I think maybe with one exception, people are really excited to be there. I think there was one guy who was in Germany that you could tell he was phoning it in, but luckily he had another person with him. So it's
good.
So we spent our time on the other person.
I must have missed that. I've never seen any that or heard any that.
Well, I can tell you as you do these, and especially as you edit them, you pick up on a lot of verbal clues, and so
okay. So if I could go back to law libraries for a while, because sure. I still think of you as a law librarian. When I met you, you were a law librarian, and now that's, of course, expanded quite a bit. Yeah. How can you talk about how they've changed since you started working in them?
So I think there's a lot of it hasn't changed. I mean, and I mean that in a good way. I think that when I started in the late 90s, this was the boom of the World Wide Web, right? A lot. You had Westlaw and Lexis coming in. You were moving off of CD-ROM towers and 3.5-inch floppy disks to databases that you could access anywhere in the world as long as you had an internet connection.
Right.
And the librarians have always been right at the forefront of these changes in technology. And so, we went through the web. We went through iterations of different databases and this influx of so many other contributors to legal information. Bloomberg, PLI, all of these folks that were coming in and creating this web front end to their database, right. And it was the librarians that were then bringing this into the firm. It was the librarians that were making it known it's available, training on it, understanding, hey, there's two products that do the exact same thing. We think this one is better for what we're doing. And so becoming not just the, pointing to the product and then standing back, but actually being, contributing to that. And then as we, went through the economic downturn, and then we started looking at cloud-based technologies and new entrants into the market, some of the more traditional AI tools from the, 2017 through 2022. And then, of course, the Gen AI tools since 2022. The librarians have kind of run, out front and have been, interviewing, we've been talking with the vendors. We've been talking with the new entrants into, in fact, a lot of times those startups come right to the library because, one, that's kind of where the money is.
Right.
And two, it's where the knowledge is.
It's where the knowledge is. There's no one better prepared to evaluate.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like to point out to everyone, just how much the librarian community has contributed to innovation within the legal industry, for decades. And I don't think that's changed. I think where we tend to, what we tend to do is we're almost like little mini startup engines ourselves, maybe incubators. And what I mean by that is you look at things like competitive intelligence, you look at things like knowledge management. A lot of those started in law libraries. And what tends to happen is we kind of give birth to it, we raise it, and then stand it up, and it's ready to go. And then, someone comes in and takes it away from us. And that part has always been a little bit of a sore point for me, because and then it's like all of a sudden, well, KM has been here forever. KM attorneys have done this. I was like, no, we started that. And,
and
then
there was no such thing.
We had it all set up for you, which is good. I think, and if that's what you like to do, my dad was really good at that with restaurants. He was great at starting a restaurant, getting it up, getting it going, hiring good people and letting it run. And I think if he could have done that over and over again, he would have been perfectly happy. I mean, he was perfectly happy, but I think that's the thing that he loved. And I think it's one of the things that librarians love. My sticking point with that is I think we need to stand up and toot our own horn a little bit more than what we do, because we've created multiple departments, entities within the legal industry.
Right.
And I think people tend to forget that, mostly because we're not tooting our own horn. So honk, honk.
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, knowledge management is an outgrowth. Competitive intelligence is an outgrowth. There were no such departments when we started. No. You didn't start till the late 90s?
I didn't start till the late 90s, although my hair says I started in like the 70s.
Well, I started with Matthew Bender in 1989.
Yeah.
So I was 30. I figured it was time to get a real job, and so I did.
Well, I'm 4 years behind because I did 4 years in the Army, so I always point to that as I'm older than what my number of years in the industry say.
Well, the service will do that to you.
Yeah, it will.
And kids. Let's not forget, kids make you older.
Yep, I got 4 of those, and now I have 3 grandkids. So it happens. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. My oldest son and his wife adopted three children this year, and so it's been great.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
My son just turned 28. We have no prospect of grandchildren anytime soon, but there's plenty of time. Plenty of time.
Oh, always time.
Yep. So how is Jackson Walker handling AI in research?
So we jumped in pretty early. So as you know, I've got outstanding relationships with all of the vendors, and you build those, and it's give and take, and it's kind of setting expectations and understanding that. But when by October of 2023, we had already signed contracts with both Thomson Reuters and Lexis to use their AI products at the time. And so we jumped in early, and I think part of it was we knew this was going to be something that we were going to do. So let's not play around with it. Let's just jump in and do it. And then we can get everyone trained up, figure out what works, what doesn't work. And, as they say, however the AI is today, that's the worst it's going to be, because it's going to be better tomorrow. And my goodness, you see that it's almost every week. There's something, some new improvement that's going on. That's really, really an improvement, not just fluff marketing pieces. So we jumped in really early. We also, have, as most firms do, have Microsoft partnerships. Mm-hmm. So we also have Copilot. We looked at Harvey, and so we have Harvey. So right now we really have 4 legs to our AI table.
Right.
That's Thomson Reuters, Lexis, Harvey, and Microsoft, and each one brings its own flavor in and abilities and inabilities.
Yeah, its own strengths.
Yeah, and so that's we're not limiting ourselves to those 4. We're constantly looking at other tools that make sense for us. There's some point solutions that do really good at 1 or 2 things, but we're being very careful on those. We're looking much more of what can we do with what we already have. Is there something we can add on to that? Is there something we can develop what we have into, or do we need to look at a new tool? So we're being ambitious, but also methodical about how we're approaching it.
And how is the firm and your library team in particular, how are they using it to teach in training associates or training new attorneys?
Yeah, a lot of it is one-on-one type training, which is highly effective and very inefficient.
Yeah.
So what we really started off with was trying to let people know which tool works for the right project. If you're doing legal research, where it's very important that the citations are correct and exist and are quoting the real words within that actual case, then we show them the Lexis and Westlaw tools.
Right.
If you're looking for flexibility, or you're looking to take a large amount of documents and then have that synthesized and be able to kind of data crunch that information, the Harvey tools do a great job on that, and they're set up with really good, even just built-in workflows for attorneys just in their day-to-day. And then with the Microsoft tools, we go, when you're looking at what you're doing internally, your emails, what you're saving in your documents, communications, the Copilot aspect of it really works well with that.
Right.
So it's having a large toolbox, but then understanding which drawer on that toolbox do I need to open up for this project, because as they say, if your only tool is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
That's right.
And we want to make sure we don't just beat everything with a hammer.
No, it's all about having the right tool, the best tool that you have available.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
Interesting. And how is the firm using it in teaching? Because I consider that a little different from training.
Yeah. So the teaching's a little bit different. I think we do a lot of bringing in some of the vendors to do some of the teaching.
Okay.
We have an excellent training staff here at the firm that we work with very closely. And in fact, they're terrific. We have really kind of split in 2. We have an IT training group, and then we have an attorney development training group. And so depending on, and I occasionally will ask the wrong one, and I'll be shifting. It's like, no, that's this department. And so a lot of our value that we do is not necessarily in the direct teaching, but it's in the more identifying what topics we're weak in, that we need training in, working with the excellent training staff that we have, but then connecting them to the right people externally or even internally to help solidify that training program, so that they can coordinate it correctly. They can do the training. They can record the sessions. They can track who's taking what. So, I think it's nice just being in a large law firm like that where we're not having to do everything, but we still have a role in identifying and being that ear to the ground to identify what it is that we need the training on and where we're going to get the biggest return for our investment.
Well, I think what you said, as soon as you said that first sentence, I was like, okay, that's a critical point. That's critically important. You guys are ascertaining the need, ascertaining where the little gaps might be, and looking at everything you have in the way of choices, in the way of tools to use and people to involve to make sure everybody gets everything they need. That's tremendous.
Yeah. And I think that almost takes a little bit higher self-awareness and ability, because it's we're very prone to, well, let me get you the answer,
right? And here's the list of what we do. This is our training our training menu,
and it's taking it to that next step to where we know we have resources, whether they're online resources, they're internal resources, they're people resources, or the technology resources, and having that wide knowledge of what does what, really kind of helps in the process.
Absolutely. But again, nobody that started last week could do that, or even somebody that started last year could do that, because there's institutional memory too, and there's a deeper understanding of what these tools do.
Yeah.
So how do you guys use PLI? You're what we call a privileged member. So anybody that works for the firm has the CLE capability. And also you guys have PLI PLUS, which is all of our material, our written material. And you have had both of those for a while. So how do you guys employ our resources?
Yeah, so I would say probably in two distinct ways. One is we use it very much for I need to know this now kind of process. So if one of the lawyers is working on a novel issue, or they want to make sure that they're covering all their bases, we have a huge library of solid resources that they can go to and get up to speed on. The second prong of that is how do I keep current on changes that are happening, and also I think one of the things that may be underappreciated, but I super appreciate, is that there's lots of content on PLI on the running of the firm side, of the administrative side of the firm. Right. I know you've got excellent authors out there, way too many to mention, but I know we use, there's a couple of books that are written about, first year and second year associates, kind of the experience that they're going to have. Right. And we're not alone in this. A lot of firms are doing this now, where they are really pushing their associates into business development much earlier in their career than it used to. Because it used to, you do all the grunt work till you were like a fifth, sixth, seventh year. Right. And now, I've got first and second years who are bringing in clients now, and they need to understand, this is how that works. Here's how you make money at it. Here's how you build the relationships. And there's lots of content that we use that really kind of help make sure that we have information that we can be giving them to read and update and learn on their own when it comes to the business side. So it's not just the practice areas that benefit, it's also the business areas as well.
Great. Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, because we and I'm sure Sarah's told you all this, we've expanded enormously our resources in that area. There's a space on pli.edu for new associates, specifically teaching them all kinds of things they need to know.
Yeah, we point them straight to it.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I am glad. That's great. And then our KMI book is fairly recent, and the one, I think it's called How to Run Legal Like a Business. So you know about those.
Yep.
Good. What do you see the future of AI being in law firms?
Yeah, I think you're going to see more and more of it, obviously. I think it's going to be integrated in a way that you're not even going to realize that there's an AI component to it. And so like a conversation I had this morning was reviewing not a brand new tool, but a rebranded tool for matter management that, uses AI. When you open a matter, it actually kind of indexes everything that you have. It looks at previous matters that are in similar aspect in legal area, and it actually will automatically, based on that, create kind of a checklist and flow chart of, okay, now that you've opened it, here's the first 5 steps that you need to do. And then, it might take a little bit of tweaking, but as the saying goes, attorneys do better with a red pen than a blue pen.
Yes.
That it gives them something to edit rather than something to create. And I think that's going to be one of the largest benefits that we get as far as return on our investment when it comes to AI, is that it's going to get you to step 3 a lot faster. And so whether you're a first year associate and you're doing due diligence work, or you're a partner and you're doing client development work, it's just going to be there. You're not even going to realize that the AI is doing that. And and as the old saying goes, the things that you don't understand look a lot like magic until you kind of understand what it is that it's actually doing. And so I think at first it's going to look a lot like magic, but after a while it's just going to be part of the process. And I think that's the biggest benefit, not the only benefit, but I think that's something that we're going to see. That I'll say it now because I don't think we'll appreciate it when it's just part of the process.
Could be. And how about in law libraries? How do you see AI in law libraries in the future?
I think there's a lot of opportunity, and I think we're seeing some of that now. And with it being, let me put this in an apolitical way. Mm-hmm. There are things like reviewing regulations to look for duplication in the regulations. There's a way of looking at proposed legislation in a way that may actually, you can kind of workshop what are potential issues that we're not thinking about. And then I also, speaking almost on that same vein, I think a lot of opportunity for people that dig into the information and are looking for knowledge and actionable insights on that. I think one of the things that is most valuable in AI right now is the show me what I'm not thinking about. What is it that I'm missing here? And it's a good, I think, interaction. And I think the law librarians that look at this as a kind of idea generator, an extra voice in the room, another set of eyes, it really makes it, I think it makes our job much deeper and broader. And I think there's just a lot of insights that we can get from the information a lot faster. And as the tools improve, I think, we'll get there a lot more faster, accurate, and cheaper. I was talking with just one quick side story. I was talking with Ed Walters at the ClioCon conference because VLEX, Fastcase got bought by VLEX. VLEX got now been acquired by Clio. Right. But I asked him, I said, because the legal research tools probably in the last 3 months and maybe even just in the last month have just improved so significantly. It's noticeable how much better the answers are because quite frankly, for 2 years, it was not good. And so I asked him, I said, well, is it because of the foundational models, the large language models are out there, are just so much better now? And he actually, because we're both geeks and nerds, whatever you want to call us, he goes, actually it's the vector databases that have gotten better. Because when you're a Westlaw or a Lexis or a VLEX, you have this huge corpus of information, right? And you don't want to just turn that into a large language model because it varies. You want to leverage a large language model, but you want to have this very static well-organized information. And, a lot of the listeners may have heard of, we've taken RAG technology, retrieval augmented generation, as the way to connect that database of research and information to the large language models.
Right.
And so what he was saying was, for years, that vector database, which took concepts rather than keywords,
Right.
and basically extracted, here are the 50 documents, to put a number on it. Here are the 50 documents based on your prompt that we think the answer is in.
Right.
And you can do that. Well, the vector database wasn't all that great.
Right.
30 of those may be completely irrelevant. And so he's saying a lot of that, the vector database has gotten so much better that you're getting a better throughput and recall of the right information. And so as that improves, I think with people like us who understand the information, understand the structure of it, know what the right answer should look like.
Right.
I think this is going to be it's going to make a huge impact, and it's going to make us look like, like, oh my God, how did we ever do this without you?
Right. Yeah. The taxonomy and the metadata sounds okay. No, I'm a big fan of Ed Walters.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry to go all geeky on you there, but
no, that's okay.
It's in the name.
No, he's a great guy and brilliant. No, I met Phil and Ed. Oh gosh, I can't even remember what AAL it was, but they were tiny. It had just sort of begun. Yeah. And Covington and Burling was a client of mine. I was their Matthew Bender rep in Washington. I didn't meet them there, but very fond thoughts of their firm and both of those guys. Yeah. Of course, Phil's
we both, I think we met, must have been early 2000s, because they had just started. But when I was at the Oklahoma Supreme Court, we actually, do you remember Lois Law?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so Lois Law was our partner in helping us get the initial cases that we needed, and then we went with a uniform citation, not vendor neutral citation system. And so Ed and I kind of met early in his career, because that was something he was working with a lot of state courts, a lot of bar associations. So yeah, we go way back. We both had really dark hair when we first met.
Well, I never met him with dark hair, but I met his son. This is several years ago. Another Ed Walters sighting, another AAL. It might have been Chicago, like around 2016 or something like that. Mm. His son was there, and he was much younger than he is now, and he was just enthralled by the lanyards. And you could get all those little stickers to go at the bottom of them, and so he wondered about those stickers. I was like, "Oh, come with me." Yeah. So I took Ed's wife and his son over, and he chose a whole string of ribbons.
Yes. Those ribbons are great.
He ended up with a bunch of ribbons, but the one I remember, it said future AAL speaker. Yeah, I made sure he got that one. Yeah. So that was fun. No, Fastcase is a partner of ours, a partner of PLI's. Our case links go to Fastcase.
Excellent. Yeah. Good people.
Yes, they are. They are that. What are some of the most important learnings that you have picked up in your career, and could be from the Army, could be from Oklahoma, could be from anywhere, that you would share with people?
So I always, on more snarky, no good deed goes unpunished. I love saying that around
we know
here,
that.
But I mean it in a good way. When somebody comes to me and is like, what we need to do is, these things, I was like, all right, go, make it happen. And like, wait, I don't want to do it. I want somebody else to do it. It's like, nope, it's your idea. One of the things, and I say it all the time on the podcast, and in fact, when the Sora 2 video editing or video creation software came out a couple of weeks ago, you could put yourself in a TED Talk. And so I created and I posted it on LinkedIn. It's something that I say all the time. And that is, all problems are communication problems. And so if you open the lines of communication, that you keep those open, that you're responsive and you're honest, and you let people know what's going on, so reduce that uncertainty. It may not make the end result better, but it makes the process better, and it makes people less angry about it. Because the worst thing that you can do when there's uncertainty is nothing. And so I think a lot of times it's just a matter of, right now with me transitioning away from the library is driving my librarians crazy because there's this uncertainty. But I'm sitting there telling them, it's like, look, as soon as I know something,
I'll tell you.
You'll be the first to know. So don't think that I'm hiding anything. As soon as I know, I'll pick up the phone and I'll call everybody and let them know what's going on. And so, that whole process of making sure that you're talking with people, you're explaining things, and you're reducing the uncertainty in the environment. That's great. And I can give you one example of where that really affected me, and it goes back to the Army. In 1990, I had gotten out of the Army. So I joined in 1986, right out of high school, and then did 4 years, got out, and started college at Cameron University in Lawton, Oklahoma. So I stayed at Fort Sill and went to school there. And so in January of 91, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, and then we started went from Desert Shield, went to Desert Storm. And then I got a nice telegram from then President George H.W. Bush saying, hey, welcome back to the Army. Come on.
We need you to come back.
Report to Fort Sill in 3 days. And so I, went. I ended up getting stationed at Fort Lewis, Washington. As soon as we decided that we weren't going to go into Baghdad at the time, the war was pretty much over, and we started winding everything down. But the field artillery guy that was stationed at Fort Lewis, Washington, we didn't know. We had an open-ended date of when we were going to get released.
Right.
And that uncertainty that no one knows what it is really drove everyone crazy, because we were like, well, we know, unless something weird happens, we know it's over.
Right.
But it's like, so, when do we get to go home?
Right. You're just in limbo.
Yeah. And so then that's the thing. And so I always, when I tell people about, all problems are communication problems, and you want to reduce uncertainty, I point to that because I think it really gives them a real easy story to see what it means to be in that limbo, to not know, what's going to happen, whether it's getting out of the Army or what's happening on this project, or am I going to get this raise or, promotion, or am I,
who's my new boss?
There's things that you can adapt that story to. And so I say as a leader, make sure that communication is there. The other thing that I tell my staff, and it drives them crazy, and they actually call me on it every once in a while by actually doing it, is I say, if you need something, ask, because typically the default answer is no. And so asking is not going to, make it worse. And so I've had some of my staff come up to me and go, okay, well, I need this. And I was like, oh, darn it. But again, it enables them to, and then that way I know what's going on, what their needs are, because they know, they have much more experience of doing what they do than I do.
Exactly.
And so I rely upon them to be the experts and to come to me when they need it, and then for me to stay the heck out of their way when they don't need me there.
No, it's important to ask, and sometimes the answer is no, but how would you know otherwise? Yep. How would you know if you don't ask?
Exactly.
How about, what do you wish you had known when you started out of the Army, out of school, went to work?
What do I wish I had known? Well, I wish I had known to exercise more, and take better care of my health when I was younger. But as far as the career, there was something I actually learned early on, and I think really helped me out, and that was, I always mention this. I'd actually applied for a job at the University of Houston in the 90s when John Schultz was the director. And I always tell the story as it was a line he never remembered saying, and it was a line I never forgot. And that was, he kind of asked me where I wanted to be, in 5 years. That question right there. And I gave him kind of that typical, well, I'm going to progress up the line, And the thing that caught me off guard was he said, well, why would you ever limit yourself to that? And so, just that idea of, kind of have those stretch goals out there. Kind of look at things that you think, well, I may not be able to get this, but I would really like to do, this. And so I ended up not getting the job, but I went back and I was at Oklahoma City University Law School at the time. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to teach a course on computer law. And so I submitted the course on computer law, and I watched a tenured professor come out and get rejected for the class that they had proposed. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able, there's no way. Right. And I go in and they're like, oh yeah, this is exactly what we need. When you're going to do this in the fall semester. So, but I wouldn't have done that if John hadn't told me, it was like, don't limit yourself. So that's something I learned early, but I think a lot of people, that's something that not everyone gets that lucky, even though you make your own luck. Yeah.
So I think the line was, why would you limit yourself to that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah. Attribute that to John Schultz.
There you go. There you go. No, that's what happens though. People say things and they make a huge difference sometimes. And the person who said them never has a clue unless you go back and tell them. And I'm sure you've shared that with him because like you said, he doesn't remember saying it. Yeah.
And Nikki Singleton had taught me a lot of stuff, but I can't repeat what she said.
That's okay. You could, and we could all three enjoy it and edit it out, but you don't have to.
Yeah, you'd have to put an explicit label on the podcast. Nobody wants that.
No, we don't do that. We would edit it out. We would edit it out. Is there anything else you want to say that I haven't asked about or that we haven't touched on?
Yes, there is one thing for the people that have stuck around this long. I think that the law librarian community still has a significant amount to contribute to the legal industry. I think that one of the things that I was very disappointed in this year was looking at the partners that we have worked with for decades, that we have made successful, ignore us on these AI announcements that came out in the summer. I have talked to them about it. I've talked with the leadership at AALL, Jenny Silbigger, and others who actually I'm going to go pick up right after this because she's here in town for the International Law Library meeting.
Right.
And so I want the vendors who we have helped become successful, whether that's through
fed
helping
and built
them,
and nurtured.
Yeah. Don't forget about us, and don't think that the person with the innovation title is necessarily the right person to make a big announcement with. I think a lot of the things still come in through the library and get vetted through the library, get tested, piloted, and we're great at breaking stuff. And I think it's short-sighted, and I'll say it. I think it's disrespectful that the vendors tend to forget, just how much of a support we've been, and we're still here. We're just as important now as we were back then, if not more important. And so when you have those announcements, don't forget who your customer is. So that's the one thing that I wanted to say is before we signed off.
Thank you. And thank you for joining me. I knew that the International Association of Law Librarians was in Houston, but I did not remember that we scheduled right in the middle of that week. Yep. And you've got other things going on. So I especially appreciate your time. And it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. We catch each other, glancingly at the conferences, but this has just been a delight. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Karen. This has been great.
You're more than welcome. More than welcome.
Thanks for listening to the Practising Law Librarian. Be sure to subscribe and listen to our latest episodes wherever you listen to podcasts. And to learn more about the Practising Law Institute, please visit pli.edu. To learn more about PLI PLUS, which provides electronic access to the full collection of PLI Press publications, and schedule a demo with a member of our team, please visit pli.edu/plus. Please note that the views and opinions expressed during this podcast represent those of the individuals being interviewed and not necessarily those of PLI.